Welcome to Crime and Punishment for Busy People. You're about to discover why this intense Russian novel from over a century ago still hits like a psychological thriller today. Written in the year 1866 by Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment isn't just an old book. It's a wild dive into the mind of a man on the edge. This novel asks the big questions. What makes someone commit a crime? Can guilt drive you mad? Is redemption even possible? Heavy stuff, right? Crime and Punishment doesn't just explore psychology, it's also a time capsule of Russia in crisis, poverty, inequality, and clashing ideologies boiling over in the streets of Saint Petersburg. And Dostoevsky? He was writing from experience. The man was nearly executed, did hard labor in Siberia, and came back with stories that could melt your brain. The novel wrestles with morality, guilt, justice, ideology, and it does it all without ever feeling like a boring lecture. Seriously, so whether you're here for murder, philosophy, or just to finally say you've read the book, you're in the right place. Let's crack open this masterpiece and meet the people inside. First up, who was Dostoevsky? And what kind of world did he live in? Buckle up. All right, now that we're stepping into the mind behind the madness, let's talk Dostoevsky. To understand Crime and Punishment, you've got to understand the man who wrote it. And trust me, Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky lived a life as intense as his characters. In his 20s, Dostoevsky was arrested for joining a radical intellectual group. He was hauled before a firing squad, and then, surprise, given a last-minute pardon. Welcome to Russian Trauma, Deluxe Edition. Instead of death, he got 4 years in a Siberian prison camp. There, Dostoevsky's life and soul were transformed. He saw suffering up close, and more importantly, he rediscovered his deep, haunting faith. Post-prison, Dostoevsky started writing again, but life didn't exactly get easier. He was drowning in debt, haunted by trauma, and addicted to roulette. Yes, roulette! Man went from spiritual crisis to Vegas energy real fast. But here's the twist. His losses at the roulette table helped him win at literature. Under crushing deadlines and financial pressure, Dostoevsky wrote with fire in his pen. That's how Crime and Punishment was born, out of desperation and genius. When he wrote Crime and Punishment in 1866, Russia was in turmoil. Radical ideas like nihilism and utilitarianism were everywhere, especially among students like Raskolnikov, our tormented anti-hero. These ideologies weren't just trends, they were earthquakes. Dostoevsky saw them as dangerous, especially when they denied the human soul. So he wrote Crime and Punishment as a warning. What happens when ideas go too far? At the same time, Dostoevsky believed in redemption, not just punishment. The novel isn't just a critique, it's a plea for mercy, for meaning, for saving the soul in a fractured world. So when you read Crime and Punishment, you're not just reading a novel, you're hearing a man scream into the void about politics, about belief, about guilt and grace. It's Dostoevsky's soul on paper. And that's our whirlwind tour of Dostoevsky's life. The prison, the roulette wheel, and the revolution. All of it feeds directly into the storm that is Crime and Punishment. Next, we dive into the plot itself. Brace yourself. All right, deep breath. We're entering the eye of the storm. This is the plot of Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky's psychological thriller about a murder, a conscience in crisis, and a soul in search of salvation. Meet Raskolnikov, a broke former student with a wild theory. Some people, like Napoleon, can commit crimes if it leads to a greater good. He decides to test this theory with an axe. He kills the pawnbroker. But things go wrong fast. Her sister walks in and he murders her too. This wasn't part of the plan. Suddenly, it's not a philosophical experiment, it's a double homicide. Raskolnikov escapes, but guilt hits like a sledgehammer. He gets sick, starts hallucinating. He's sweating, raving, muttering. His mind becomes its own prison. Enter Sonya, a young woman forced into prostitution to support her family, but still full of faith and kindness. Raskolnikov is drawn to her, maybe because she believes in redemption, maybe because she's the only one not judging him. Then comes Porfiry Petrovich, the detective who doesn't play by the book. No handcuffs, no chase scenes, just relentless psychological pressure. He suspects Raskolnikov early and corners him with questions. The walls close in. Raskolnikov confesses, not to the cops at first, but to Sonya. And it's her compassion that pushes him to turn himself in. The theory has failed. The guilt is real. The punishment is exile. He's sentenced to Siberia. Hard labor. Frozen wastelands. But Sonia follows him there, and something cracks open inside him. Not madness this time, but maybe rebirth. So, that's the crime and the punishment. But more than that, it's the journey from arrogance to humility, from isolation to love, from theory to truth. Next, we'll zoom in on Raskolnikov himself, the man at the center of it all. All right, time to meet the man behind the murder. Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov. The name's a mouthful, but don't worry, you'll remember him. He's the burning engine at the heart of this story. Once a law student, now broke and hungry, Raskolnikov's life is falling apart. He's dropped out, pawning his last belongings, and spiraling in a tiny rented room the size of a closet. But here's the twist. He doesn't just suffer. He thinks. A lot. He's come up with a theory. Some people, extraordinary ones, are above moral law. Like Napoleon. If they kill for a higher purpose, it's okay. Right? So he decides to test it. He picks a target. A greedy old pawnbroker. He convinces himself her death might even do some good. After all, she's a louse, he says. And he's extraordinary. He does it. With an axe. But it doesn't go as planned. He also kills her innocent sister. And instead of feeling powerful, he's wrecked. Panicked. Sick. The extraordinary man falls apart. What follows is not triumph, but torment. Raskolnikov begins to unravel. Fever, paranoia, hallucinations. He's hunted not just by the law, but by his own conscience. He swings between pride and guilt. One moment he defends his crime. The next he's consumed with shame. His mind is a battlefield between his theory and something deeper, his humanity. So, who is Raskolnikov? A murderer, yes. But more than that, he's Dostoevsky's way of asking. Can we think our way out of morality? Or does the soul fight back, no matter how smart the brain? That's our dive into the troubled, brilliant mind of Raskolnikov. He's not just the one who commits the crime. He is the crime and the punishment. But he's not alone. Next up, two figures who challenge and change him. Sonia and Porfiry. Now that we've met Raskolnikov, it's time to crack open the real beating heart of this novel. Morality, guilt, and redemption. This isn't just a crime story. It's a spiritual X-ray. Why does he suffer? Can a soul heal after a fall? Let's find out. Raskolnikov thinks he's above morality. He even writes a whole essay about it. But once the axe falls, something strange happens. His mind stays cold, but his soul starts to burn. Guilt creeps in like a fog he can't escape. This guilt isn't just emotional. Dostoevsky treats it like gravity. You can't outthink it. It pulls Raskolnikov down, down, until he's nearly crushed. That's the punishment, even before any prison bars slam shut. But Dostoevsky isn't here to destroy Raskolnikov. He wants to rebuild him. Through suffering comes purification. Think of it as spiritual rehab, Russian edition. And here's where Sonia steps in. Poor, devout, and full of quiet strength. She doesn't preach, she lives her faith. In her, Raskolnikov sees not just judgment but a path out. Redemption in this novel isn't about payback. It's about confession and connection. It's not enough to say, I did it. You have to feel it. You have to let someone see you. That's when healing starts. And under it all, a showdown between rationalism and faith. Raskolnikov thinks he can logic his way past conscience. But Dostoevsky bets on the soul. The brain calculates, but the heart revolts. So, what's the verdict? Guilt isn't optional, and redemption isn't automatic. You've got to earn it. Through suffering, through love, and through surrender. That's Dostoevsky's moral compass. That's our look at guilt and grace in Crime and Punishment. These aren't just themes, they're Dostoevsky's answer to the modern crisis of meaning. And speaking of symbols, let's talk about the city itself. Up next, Saint Petersburg as a psychological battlefield. All right, we've been through murder, guilt, and grace. Now it's time to meet the two quiet forces that shape Raskolnikov's journey from the shadows into the light. Sonia and Porfiry. They're not just side characters. They're the novel's moral anchors. Let's start with Sonia. She's everything Raskolnikov isn't. Selfless, humble, faithful, forced into prostitution to support her family, yet never losing her moral clarity. Her strength, quiet, unshakable love. Sonia isn't just a symbol of suffering. She's a spiritual guide. She's the first person Raskolnikov confesses to. Not a priest, not the law, but her. Why? Because she sees him not as a monster, but as someone who can be redeemed. Now, Enter Porfiry Petrovich, the detective who never chases, never shouts, he just waits. A master of psychology, he sees through Raskolnikov's logic like it's glass. But here's the twist. He doesn't want to punish, he wants repentance. Porfiry plays a long game. He acts like he's toying with Raskolnikov, but really, he's giving him time to choose confession over collapse. He's not just a legal authority, he's moral pressure personified. So here's the deal. Sonia saves Raskolnikov's soul through love. Porfiry guides him to justice through reason. Together, they're like two sides of a spiritual coin, compassion and conscience. And that's our look at Sonia and Porfiry. Two characters who never swing an axe but do all the heavy lifting when it comes to Raskolnikov's redemption. They're not just part of the story. They are the story's moral engine. Up next, the city itself. Saint Petersburg, foggy, feverish, full of shadows. We're taking a walk through Dostoevsky's haunted streets. We've seen the people who shaped Raskolnikov's conscience. Now, let's meet the place that shaped his mind. Welcome to Saint Petersburg, a city that sweats, sways, and spirals right alongside him. Dostoevsky doesn't just set his story in the city, he traps it there. Hot, dirty, crowded, buzzing with chaos. This Petersburg isn't romantic, it's a pressure cooker. It's no accident Raskolnikov's room is tiny and stuffy, barely big enough to turn around in. It's the city in microcosm, confining, fevered, and just a little bit mad. The city reflects his inner world. When Raskolnikov is torn up with guilt and delirium, the streets around him twist into a labyrinth. No clear way out, just more corners and more shadows. And then there's the smell. Dostoevsky mentions it often. The stink of decay, of poverty, of too many lives piled on top of each other. Even the air feels morally compromised. This isn't just set dressing, it's psychological staging. Petersburg plays an active role in the novel, pushing Raskolnikov deeper into his mental spiral. Alienation, chaos, disease, this city's got it all. But most of all, it's got symbolism. St. Petersburg is Raskolnikov's mind turned inside out. So when we say Crime and Punishment is a psychological novel, we mean it literally. The city is part of the psychology, part of the punishment, and no one escapes it unscarred. And that's our tour of Dostoevsky's St. Petersburg, a living, breathing, brooding character of its own. Next up, the storytelling itself. Let's unpack how Dostoevsky gets us so deep into his characters' heads. It's like we're in there too. All right, new chapter. Let's crack open the way Dostoevsky tells this story. Because it's not just what happens, but how. He brings us inside Raskolnikov's tormented mind that makes this novel unforgettable. Dostoevsky doesn't just describe Raskolnikov. He invades him. The novel dives into internal monologues and emotional turbulence like it's plugging directly into his brain. This is called psychological realism. It's like Dostoevsky put a microphone in Raskolnikov's soul, and sometimes even forgets to tell us what's real and what's just in his head. And the technique he uses? It's called free, indirect discourse. It lets Dostoevsky sneak into Raskolnikov's thoughts without ever saying, "He thought." It just is. We're living inside his breakdown. This narrative style creates suspense not through action, but through psychological instability. We're never sure what Raskolnikov will do, or whether he even knows himself. Sometimes we're trapped with him in fever dreams. Other times, it feels like we're watching him from outside, only to suddenly snap back into his mind with a jolt. So this isn't just narration, it's immersion. Dostoevsky built a literary panic attack, and we're riding shotgun. And that's the brilliance of Dostoevsky's storytelling. He doesn't describe madness. He recreates it. From whispers of guilt to full-blown delirium, we feel it all from the inside out. So to wrap it up, Dostoevsky's narrative structure isn't just a way to tell the story. It's the engine of Raskolnikov's descent. Every page pulls us deeper into his fractured mind. Up next, how the world responded to this psychological bombshell. Spoiler, it made waves. Let's talk reception. Critics, readers, and all the dramatic reactions. All right, we've taken a deep dive into the structure of Dostoevsky's masterpiece. Now let's zoom out. How did the world react when Crime and Punishment first hit the shelves? Buckle up. We're entering the era of its reception. Critical acclaim, public buzz, and long-lasting impact. Crime and Punishment was an instant sensation when it was published in serial form in 1866. Russian readers were hooked. Some followed Raskolnikov's story like it was a psychological thriller. Because, well, it was. Critics weren't just impressed, they were stunned. Many called it a philosophical earthquake. Dostoevsky wasn't just writing a novel, he was dissecting the human soul under a microscope. The novel's psychological insight wasn't just ahead of its time, it helped shape the time. It influenced major thinkers like Freud, who saw in Dostoevsky a kind of proto-psychoanalyst, and Nietzsche, who admired the depth of the existential struggle. Writers, too, couldn't get enough. From Camus to Kafka, Dostoevsky's psychological realism lit a fire. He wasn't just an author, he was a blueprint, and the legacy didn't fade. Today, Crime and Punishment is standard reading in literature and philosophy courses worldwide. It's on syllabi, in exam questions, and still sparks heated classroom debates. So yes, Dostoevsky dropped a literary bomb in 1866, and it's still sending out shockwaves. From Freud to your philosophy 101 professor, people are still trying to answer the same question. What do we do with guilt, morality, and redemption? That's the reception of Crime and Punishment. Famous from the get-go, studied ever since, and still messing with people's minds. Up next, how this novel keeps popping up in modern culture. From true crime podcasts to Netflix thrillers. Alright folks, last chapter. We've followed Raskolnikov through murder, guilt, breakdown, and redemption. But now, let's talk about how Crime and Punishment keeps haunting our modern world like a philosophical ghost with a lot of thoughts. Modern critics love reading this novel through an existential lens. Think, how do we create meaning in a meaningless world? Raskolnikov isn't just a murderer, he's a dude drowning in philosophical quicksand. Postmodern takes? Oh yeah, they paint Raskolnikov as one of the first true anti-heroes. He's not noble, he's not pure, he's messy, moody, and morally ambiguous. Basically the blueprint for half the characters in modern TV dramas. And let's talk relevance. Themes like alienation, guilt, and society's crushing pressure? Still super relatable. In a world of burnout and existential dread, Raskolnikov speaks to something raw and real. Crime and Punishment has been adapted countless times. Films, plays, radio dramas, even comic books. This isn't just a Russian novel. It's a cultural shapeshifter that keeps finding new ways to tell its story. If you've made it this far, you clearly love big ideas and tortured souls. And hey, so do we! Smash that like button and subscribe if you want more deep dives into lit that punches you in the brain and the heart. And let us know in the comments, what part of Raskolnikov's story hit you hardest? His spiral into madness? His search for meaning? Or that wildcat scene? Let's talk literature.